It's time to talk. 44,000 Canadians lost their jobs. Early this month, Statistics Canada finally revealed that Canada's unemployment rate surged to 6.6% in August alone. This number is up 0.2% in just 1 month. As the number of unemployed Canadians continue to grow, hope continues to fade away. With nearly half of Canadians living with a mere $200 to financial insolvency, the prospect of job loss is terrifying. This comes at a time of unprecedented cost of living crisis. Food costs are up, gas costs more for every kilometer, the carbon tax is making winters colder with unaffordable home heating, and home ownership seems to be a fleeting hope. Unemployment is even worse for young people, with 16.7% of young Canadians unable to find a sustainable job. The result is an economy in shambles. Let me tell you why that is. In the early 1960s, an economist named Arthur Melvin Okun proposed an economic theory now known as Okun's Law. While the formula may not perfectly apply to every country on the planet, the concept itself is sound. Okun theorized that for every 1% increase in the unemployment rate, a country's GDP growth will decrease by approximately 2%. We've seen that happen near the beginning of the COVID pandemic. We are seeing the same thing happening today. As Canada's unemployment rate continues to increase and gross domestic product growth slows down, the threat of a recession becomes even more real. But before we move forward, let's solidify our definition of recession. Most economists agree that 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth constitute a recession. At this point, the problem becomes very clear. Canada's slow growth in productivity coupled with the surge in unemployment is pointing toward a gloomy financial outlook. On top of all that, Canada's GDP per capita has been falling for 5 consecutive quarters. In fact, since 2022, Canada's GDP per capita has fallen by 3.6%. That is so bad that economists at RBC are calling today's economics trend a recession-like. A recession is good for no one. If we fall into a recession, the losses could be unimaginable. They could include the jobs of our neighbor, family, and maybe even yours. If you have stocks in RRSP account, they are at risk. And so, if your retirement, even grocery store shelves may end up empty with the recession-caused decline in production. The bottom line is a recession will leave the fridge empty, the gas tank dry, and Canadians out of money. Let's hit pause for a moment. So how did we get here? A decade ago, Canadians had hope. If young people work hard enough, they could eventually buy a home. Parents could fill their gas tanks to drop their kids at school, and seniors could grocery shop and still have some change afterward. Then came 2015. The Liberals were elected to government on a promise of sunny ways.
Sunny ways, my friends, sunny ways.
Yet, the promise made were ridiculous. Justin Trudeau promised you financial prosperity, but said he would run some modest deficits. He also promised that the budget would balance itself. He made it sound so easy, but look at the results. Food, housing, and gas are more expensive. Jobs are hard to get, and even Paul Baudry, the former governor of the Bank of Canada, says that relative to other countries, Canada is getting collectively poorer, end quote. Conservatives fought these senseless economic policies from day one of this government. I, for one, have been concerned about the impact of Liberal policies on Canada's productivity since 2016 pre-budget consultations. The productivity level among Canadian manufacturers, at least in comparison to the to the rest of the industrial world. Knowing that when your dollar is up, you upgrade your manufacturing facilities and equipment, and then when your dollar is down, that you're ready to go start exporting and creating jobs. Is this happening in Canada? And can you please brief us on the productivity level in Canada? If you can be precise, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah. So first of all, what the relationship I make with investment in capacity, it's not necessarily the value of the dollar, it's cash flow. If you have more cash flow, usually you drive more investment. Yes, it's true, a lot of equipment is imported, but at the same time, if you have cash flow, you're not going to be able to buy much, right? But there's an effect, but it's not entirely the only effect. Productivity, you're right. Right now, we produce, for 1 hour worked in Canada, we produce for $44 worth of goods. If you compare it to companies like Germany, France, USA, you're all above $58 per hour. So, yeah, it's about quality of life, but really what it's about, it means if this is worth $44, I take an hour to produce it. And if I go to compete against Germans in Germany, they can make 1.5 in the same hour. So multiply that by millions. It means I'm not competitive. So it's one thing to go and sign free trade agreements with all these countries, but it's like going to war with a small gun, right?
That is exactly the job of an opposition party. It is our job to hold the government accountable. But the problem here is not every party is so committed. The NDP, for example, were in bed with the Liberals. Jagmeet Singh and his party voted a whopping 24 times for the carbon tax with the Liberals. Salaut Singh liked to pretend that he is different. Yet for 2 years, he stood with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. The truth is, neither Justin or Jagmeet is worth the cost of their wacko policies to Canadians. What we need is common sense. The same common sense that Canadians use every day to feed their families, stretch their dollars, and pay their bills. Before I was elected, I was a small business owner. I understand that budgets don't balance themselves and that deficits are never a good thing. That's common sense. The same common sense that the Conservatives will cover with. We are ready to fix the budget, create jobs, and grow the economy. Let's bring it home.